The moment my son-in-law pointed at the couch and said those words, "Let her sleep there," in the house I had paid for with my own money, something inside me broke. Not tears. Not sadness. Something cold and sharp. I smiled at him that night. He had no idea what was coming. By the time I was done, he would beg for mercy I would never give. Before we get into this story of ultimate revenge, if you love justice being served and watching disrespectful people get exactly what they deserve, please smash that subscribe button and hit the like button as well to support me on this journey, because this story needs to be heard by every disrespectful sons, husbands and son-in-laws. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening to my revenge story from. I like to know where you are supporting me from. Trust me, you'll want to hear every single detail of how I made him regret the day he ever thought he could disrespect me in my own home. My name is Patricia, and for 58 years, I thought I understood people. I raised 2 beautiful children as a single mother after my husband passed away when they were still young. I worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse, saved every penny I could, and built a life for my family from nothing. My daughter, Amanda, was my pride and joy. Smart, kind, and beautiful. She graduated from college, got a good job, and then she met him. Brandon. I still remember the first time Amanda brought him home for Sunday dinner. He had this smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, you know what I mean? Like he was performing being charming rather than actually being charming. But Amanda was glowing, completely head over heels. And I told myself I was just being overprotective. Every mother thinks no man is good enough for her daughter, right? Brandon worked in sales. He talked big, always had some deal cooking, some promotion coming, some major client on the hook. He wore expensive watches and drove a leased BMW he could barely afford. Red flags I chose to ignore because my daughter was happy. They dated for 2 years before he proposed. The wedding was beautiful. I paid for most of it, actually. Brandon's family had money problems, his father had gambling debts, his mother was sick, so I stepped up. It cost me nearly $30,000, but I did it with a smile because I loved my daughter, and I wanted her special day to be perfect. After the wedding, they moved into a small apartment in the city. Brandon's big sales job wasn't paying as well as he claimed. Amanda worked long hours as an accountant, often coming home exhausted while Brandon complained about his boss, his clients, his commute. I visited them often, brought groceries, helped with bills when they fell short. I told myself this was temporary. Young couples struggle. It's normal. Then Amanda got pregnant. The joy in her voice when she called me still echoes in my memory. I cried happy tears. My first grandchild. But with the pregnancy came complications. Amanda developed severe morning sickness that lasted all 9 months. She could barely work. Brandon's income alone wasn't enough for the apartment, the car payments, the mounting credit card debt from his expensive tastes. They were going to lose everything. That's when I made the decision that would eventually become my biggest regret and my greatest weapon. I owned a house, a beautiful 4-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from the city. I had bought it 15 years earlier with money from my late husband's life insurance and my own savings. It was my retirement plan, my security, my peace of mind. The house was fully paid off. No mortgage. No debt. Just mine. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment closer to the hospital where I worked. I had been renting out the house for years to a lovely family, but their lease was ending. Instead of finding new tenants, I decided to offer it to Amanda and Brandon. Just until you get on your feet, I told them. You can live there rent-free. Save money. Focus on the baby. Once Brandon's career takes off and you're stable, You can move out and I'll go back to renting it." Amanda cried and hugged me. Brandon shook my hand with that performance smile and said, "Patricia, you're a lifesaver. We won't forget this." He was right about one thing. He wouldn't forget. They moved in when Amanda was 6 months pregnant. I helped them pack, hired movers, and bought new furniture for the nursery. The house looked perfect. My daughter was safe, comfortable, preparing for motherhood in a real home instead of a cramped apartment. I felt proud. I felt like I had done the right thing. My granddaughter, Ruby, was born on a rainy Tuesday in October. She was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and Amanda's exact nose. I was in the delivery room, holding Amanda's hand, crying as Ruby took her first breath. Brandon was there too, filming everything on his phone, already talking about posting the best clips on social media. The first few months were hard. Ruby had colic. Amanda was exhausted, struggling with postpartum depression. I came over almost every day after my shifts at the hospital. I cooked meals, cleaned the house, did laundry, held Ruby so Amanda could sleep. Brandon was often working late or meeting clients, though I noticed he smelled like bar food and beer more often than not. I bit my tongue. Not my marriage, not my business. Ruby turned 6 months old. Then a year. Brandon's career was still going nowhere. Amanda went back to work part-time, leaving Ruby with a babysitter we split the cost for. I was still covering the property taxes on the house, the insurance, the maintenance. They paid for utilities and groceries, but that was it. "Just a little longer, Mom," Amanda would say. "Brandon's got a big promotion coming. Once that hits, we'll be able to contribute more." The promotion never came. Ruby turned 2, then 3. They were still in my house, rent-free. I was now 61 years old, starting to think about actual retirement, about maybe moving into my own house and enjoying the home I had worked so hard to buy. But every time I brought it up gently, Amanda looked so stressed and worried that I backed down. "We're working on it, Mom. Just give us a little more time." Time passed. Brandon's attitude started to shift. In the beginning, he had been grateful, almost embarrassed about living rent-free in his mother-in-law's house. But as the years went on, that embarrassment turned into something else. Entitlement. He started making changes to the house without asking me. Painted the living room a dark gray I hated. Installed a massive TV on the wall, drilling holes I hadn't approved. Tore up part of the backyard to build a fire pit. Each time, Amanda would apologize, but the damage was done. "It's his home too, Mom," she'd say quietly. "He needs to feel comfortable." His home. The word stung, but I swallowed the feeling. The real shift happened after Ruby turned 4. Brandon got a new job, finally a decent one with a base salary and commission. Money was coming in. They could afford to rent their own place now. But when I gently suggested they start looking, Brandon's response chilled me. "Why would we move? We're comfortable here. Ruby loves her room. It doesn't make financial sense to throw away money on rent when we have this place." "But it's my house, Brandon," I said carefully. "I've been letting you stay here to help out, but I'd eventually like to retire and maybe move in myself or sell it." "Sell it?" He laughed. "You're not serious. Where would we go? You want to uproot Ruby from her home." Her home. My house had become her home in his mind, and I was the bad guy for wanting it back. Amanda was caught in the middle, stressed and torn. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she was drowning between her husband's expectations and her mother's needs. I backed down again. I told myself I was being selfish. Ruby was happy. Amanda was managing. I could wait. But Brandon's disrespect grew bolder. He stopped thanking me when I brought groceries or gifts for Ruby. He'd grunt or nod, barely looking up from his phone. When I came to visit, he'd make comments about how I should call first, how I couldn't just drop by whenever. At my house, I started to feel like a guest, an unwelcome guest. The breaking point came on a Friday night in late November, just after Ruby's 5th birthday. I had come over to drop off a birthday present I had forgotten to bring to the party the weekend before. A beautiful dollhouse I had spent weeks picking out. It was around 8:30 at night. I used my key to let myself in. After all, it was my house. I had every right. The moment I stepped inside, Brandon was in the hallway. His face went dark. "You can't just walk in here, Patricia." I blinked, confused. "I brought Ruby's present. I texted Amanda." "I don't care what you texted. This is our home. You knock. You wait. You don't have a key privilege." My heart started pounding. "Brandon, this is my house." "No," he said, his voice low and mean. "This is where my family lives. You might own the paperwork, but this is our home. You're a guest. Act like one." Amanda appeared from the kitchen, Ruby on her hip. She looked mortified. "Brandon, stop." "Mom, I'm sorry, he's just stressed." "I'm not stressed," Brandon snapped. "I'm sick of her treating this place like she can just come and go. We have a kid. We need privacy. We need boundaries." Boundaries. In my own house. I felt something crack inside me, but I kept my voice calm. "I understand. I'll call next time." I handed Amanda the dollhouse, kissed Ruby on the forehead, and left. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking, before I could drive home. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying his words, his tone, the way he looked at me like I was an intruder, the way Amanda had looked so small and helpless, caught between us. But I told myself to let it go. He was stressed. Men say stupid things when they're stressed. It would blow over. It didn't. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Brandon started forgetting to tell Amanda when I called. He'd answer the door when I visited and make me wait outside while he checked if it was a good time. He complained to Amanda about me constantly. I was too involved, too nosy, too controlling. I pulled back. I visited less. I called less. I gave them space, hoping it would ease the tension. Then came the week before Christmas. Amanda called me crying. She had been laid off from her job. Budget cuts. She was devastated. They had bills piling up, credit card debt, and now only Brandon's income. She was scared. "Mom, can I ask you for help? Just with groceries this month. I'll pay you back, I promise." Of course I said yes. I went shopping, spent $300 on food, diapers, and Christmas presents for Ruby. I loaded everything into my car and drove to the house, my house, on a cold Wednesday afternoon. I knocked. I waited. Brandon answered. "Patricia." He didn't smile. Didn't open the door wider. I brought groceries. Amanda told me about the job. I wanted to help. He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside. I carried the bags into the kitchen, my arms aching. Amanda wasn't home. Ruby was at a friend's house. It was just me and Brandon. I started unpacking the groceries. Brandon stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You know," he said slowly, "Amanda's really stressed. She doesn't need you babying her." I kept unpacking. "I'm not babying her. I'm helping." "You're making her feel weak. Like she can't handle things without mommy swooping in." I turned to face him. "She asked for help, Brandon. I'm her mother. And I'm her husband. I take care of her. We don't need your charity. It's not charity. It's love. He laughed. A cold, bitter sound. Love. Right. You know what I think, Patricia? I think you can't let go. You can't accept that Amanda has her own family now. You're obsessed with being needed. My hands were shaking. That's not true. Isn't it? You gave us this house so you'd always have control. So you could hold it over our heads. So we'd owe you forever. I gave you this house because you needed help. We don't need help anymore. We're fine. But you can't stand that, can you? I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of him. I finished unpacking in silence, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. Patricia. I stopped. Turned. Brandon's smile was cruel. Next time call first. Like a normal person. I left. I cried the entire drive home. That night, I called Amanda. She apologized for Brandon, made excuses, and begged me not to be upset. I told her it was fine. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone in my apartment. Amanda invited me to the house for dinner, but I made an excuse. I couldn't face him. Couldn't pretend everything was okay. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was late January. Amanda called me in tears. She and Brandon had gotten into a massive fight. He had stormed out. She didn't know where he went. Ruby was scared. Amanda was having a panic attack. Mom, can you come? Please. I need you. I drove there immediately. Amanda was a mess, sobbing, hyperventilating. I held her, calmed her down, and put Ruby to bed with a story. We sat on the couch, and Amanda told me everything. Brandon was having an affair. She had found messages on his phone. Some women from work. It had been going on for months. My blood went cold. Amanda, you need to leave him. I can't. Where would I go? I don't have a job. I don't have money. I have Ruby. You have me. I can't run home to Mommy every time things get hard. Brandon and I will work through this. We have to. For Ruby. I wanted to scream. To shake her. To make her see that she deserved better. But she was an adult. Her choice. Brandon came home around midnight. He was drunk. He saw me sitting with Amanda and his face twisted with rage. What's SHE doing here? I called her, Amanda said quietly. I needed support. Support? From her? She's the problem, Amanda. She's always here, always in our business, always judging me. Brandon, please. No. He pointed at me. You need to leave. Now. I stood up slowly. I'm not leaving Amanda alone with you when you're like this. Like what? Drunk in my own home? This is my house, he said. No, it's my house, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I own it. My name is on the deed, not yours. His eyes went dark. He stepped closer. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You think you're so high and mighty, because you own some paperwork? You're nothing. A pathetic old woman who can't let go of her daughter. Amanda doesn't need you. Ruby doesn't need you. I sure as hell don't need you. Brandon. Amanda tried to intervene. Shut up, Amanda. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on me. You want to know the truth, Patricia? You're exhausting. You're suffocating. Every time you show up here with your fake smiles and your little gifts, I want to throw you out. The only reason I let you stick around is because Amanda's too weak to cut you off. Amanda gasped. I felt like I'd been slapped. Brandon smiled. Yeah, that's right. Your daughter pities you. That's why she puts up with you. Not love, but pity. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Amanda was crying, trying to pull Brandon away, but he wasn't done. You know what? I'm tired. I've had a long day. Amanda, your mother can sleep on the couch tonight. I'm not driving her home. Let her sleep there. The room went silent. Sleep on the couch. In my house. Amanda's face went pale. Brandon, what are you? You heard me. Let her sleep on the couch. I'm going to bed. Are you coming? He walked away. Up the stairs. Into the master bedroom. The bedroom in the house I owned. That I had given them out of love. Amanda looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I'm so sorry. He didn't mean that. It's okay, I whispered. But it wasn't okay. She went upstairs. I heard muffled arguing. Then silence after a few minutes. I sat on that couch all night. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, at the walls I had painted years ago, at the floor I had chosen, at the home I had built, and something inside me turned to ice. By the time the sun came up, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Brandon wanted this to be his house? He wanted to treat me like nothing? Fine, I said to myself. I was going to teach him a lesson he would never, ever forget. I left the house early that morning before anyone woke up. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a note. I just walked out the front door of my own home like a stranger, and drove back to my apartment in silence. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, I was screaming. I had given them everything. My house, my money, my time, and my love. And in return, Brandon had humiliated me, disrespected me, and made me sleep on a couch in a home I owned. Amanda had let it happen. She had gone upstairs with him, left me down there like I was nothing. That hurt worse than anything Brandon had said. For the next 3 days, I didn't answer Amanda's calls. She left voicemails, apologetic, desperate, begging me to understand that Brandon had been drunk. He didn't mean it, that they were going through a rough time. But here's the thing about rough times. They reveal who people really are. And Brandon had shown me exactly who he was. On the 4th day, Amanda showed up at my apartment. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, shoulders slumped. Ruby wasn't with her. When I opened the door, she burst into tears. Mom, please. I'm so sorry. Brandon's sorry too. He wants to apologize. I let her in, make her tea, and let her cry. When she finally calmed, I asked the question that had been burning in my chest. Amanda, do you love him? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I have a child with him, Mom. I have a life with him. I can't just throw that away. That's not what I asked. She looked down at her tea. It's complicated. It's not complicated. Either you love him, or you're afraid to leave him. Which is it? She didn't answer. I reached across the table and took her hand. Baby, you don't have to stay in a marriage that makes you miserable. You and Ruby can stay with me. We'll figure it out. You can find a new job, get back on your feet. And then what? Amanda pulled her hand away. Live with my mom at 32 years old? Be the woman who couldn't make her marriage work? Brandon made mistakes, but he's trying. He's going to counseling. He ended the affair. He's committed to us. He told you to let me sleep on a couch. He was drunk. Drunk words are sober thoughts, Amanda. She stood up abruptly. I didn't come here to have you trash my husband. I came here to ask for forgiveness. For understanding. I thought you of all people would support me trying to save my family. I do support you. But not your husband. He's my husband, Mom. If you can't respect him, then. She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung in the air between us like poison. Choose. Him or me. My daughter was asking me to choose. I felt something inside me harden. Then I guess we have nothing more to talk about. Amanda's face crumpled. Mom, please. I think you should go. She left. I closed the door and stood there for a long time, my hand still on the doorknob, my heart breaking into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. But beneath the heartbreak, something else was growing. Something cold and sharp and focused. And anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The quiet kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that makes plans. I had spent 61 years being kind. Being generous. Being the person who gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left. And where had it gotten me? Disrespected in my own home. Dismissed by my own daughter. No more. If Brandon wanted to play games, I would play. But I would play to win. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. His name was Thomas Winters, and he had handled my late husband's will 20 years ago. He was semi-retired now but still took on a few clients. I made an appointment for the following Monday. His office smelled like old books and leather. Thomas was in his 70s, sharp as ever, with white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I sat across from his desk and told him everything. Every detail. The house. The arrangement. Brandon's behavior. The couch. When I finished, Thomas leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. Patricia, he finally said, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you want them out of the house? I thought about it. I really thought about it. Did I want Amanda and Ruby homeless? No. Did I want Brandon to suffer? Yes. I want options, I said. I want to know what I can legally do. Thomas nodded. He pulled out a notepad and started writing. The house is solely in your name. He asked. I answer correct. They pay no rent. There's no formal lease agreement. That's correct. Then legally they're considered tenants at will or guests. You have the right to terminate their occupancy. However, because they've lived there for several years, and because your daughter and granddaughter are involved, this gets complicated. My stomach sank. How complicated? You would need to give them proper notice, likely 60 to 90 days depending on local laws. If they refuse to leave, you would need to file for eviction. That process could take months. And it would destroy your relationship with your daughter. I knew that already, but hearing it out loud made it real. Is there another option? Thomas tapped his pen against the desk. You could sell the house. It's your property. You have every legal right to sell it. If you put it on the market, they would be forced to leave once it's sold. It's cleaner than an eviction. Less messy legally. But Amanda would be upset. Yes. But Patricia, from what you've told me, she's already chosen her husband over you. You need to protect yourself, your assets, and your future. He was right. I knew he was right. But selling the house felt like giving up. Like letting Brandon win. I need time to think about it, I said. Take all the time you need. But Patricia, Thomas looked at me seriously. Be careful. Men like Brandon, men who feel entitled to things that aren't theirs, can become dangerous when they're threatened. If you do decide to move forward with any of this, make sure you document everything. Save texts. Save emails. Record conversations if necessary. Protect yourself. I left his office with a folder full of information and a head full of possibilities. Over the next few weeks, I did exactly what Thomas suggested. I started documenting everything. Every text message from Amanda or Brandon. Every voicemail. I wrote down dates and times of incidents, conversations, things Brandon had said. I took photos of the modifications he had made to the house without permission. I quietly gathered evidence. I also started reaching out to friends from church, from my old nursing job, from my neighborhood. I started testing the waters, asking casual questions. If you had to choose between your child and your own well-being, what would you do? The answers varied, but most people said the same thing. You can't help anyone if you destroy yourself first. I also did something I hadn't done in years. I started going to therapy. Her name was Dr. Helen Vasquez, and she specialized in family dynamics and conflict resolution. I started seeing her twice a week. I told her everything. She listened without judgment. Patricia, she said during our 4th session, you've spent your entire life being a caretaker, a giver. And that's beautiful. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that you matter too. Your needs matter. Your boundaries matter. Your home matters. But I'm her mother. Aren't I supposed to sacrifice for her? Sacrifice is one thing. Self-destruction is another. What Brandon did, what Amanda allowed, crossed a line. You know that. That's why you're here. She was right. I started to feel stronger, clearer. The fog of guilt and confusion began to lift, and underneath it was something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Meanwhile, Amanda continued to call. I answered occasionally, kept conversations brief and polite. She kept trying to rebuild the bridge Brandon had burned, but I kept my distance. She invited me to Ruby's school play. I sent a gift but didn't attend. She asked me to come over for dinner. I made an excuse. I could hear the hurt in her voice, but I didn't break. Brandon, on the other hand, seemed to think everything had blown over. He sent me a text in early March. Hey Patricia, Amanda's birthday is coming up. We're having a small party at the house. You should come. At the house? My house. I didn't respond. He texted again a few days later. Did you get my message? Amanda really wants you there. I replied simply, I'll think about it. Amanda's birthday was on a Saturday in late March. I did go. Not because Brandon invited me, but because I wanted to see my daughter. And I wanted to see the house. When I arrived, there were balloons, streamers, and a table full of food. Ruby ran to me, and I scooped her up, breathing in her little girl smell, feeling my heart squeeze. I had missed her so much. Brandon greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Patricia, glad you could make it. I smiled back. Wouldn't miss it. Amanda hugged me tight. She looked happier than she had in weeks. I'm so glad you're here, Mom. The party was fine. Awkward, but fine. I stayed for a few hours, played with Ruby, chatted with Amanda's friends, avoided Brandon as much as possible. But while I was there, I paid attention. I noticed the new furniture in the living room. Expensive. Definitely not something they could afford on their budget. I noticed Brandon's new watch, a Rolex. I noticed Amanda's new designer purse. They were spending money. A lot of money. After the party, I casually asked Amanda about it while we were alone in the kitchen. You guys seem to be doing better financially. Did Brandon get that promotion? Amanda's face brightened. Actually, yes. He got promoted to regional sales manager last month. Big raise. We're finally getting ahead. That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you. But I was also angry. They are doing well now. They could afford to move out. They could afford their own place. But they weren't moving. They were staying in my house rent-free, buying luxury items while I paid property taxes and insurance. I smiled at my daughter and hugged her goodbye. That night I made my decision. I called Thomas the next morning. I want to sell the house. There was a pause. Are you sure? Completely sure. All right. I'll draw up the necessary paperwork. But Patricia, you need to tell them. Give them notice. It's the right thing to do, and it will protect you legally. I know. I'll tell them this weekend. But I didn't. Because that Friday, something happened that changed everything. Amanda called me, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Mom, I need you. My heart stopped. What happened? Is Ruby okay? Ruby's fine. Brandon hit me. What did you say? We got into a fight. About money. He's been gambling again. He lost thousands of dollars. I confronted him and he pushed me. I fell. Then he grabbed my arm and Mom, I'm scared. Where is he now? He left. I don't know where. Pack your bag in Ruby's right now. I'm coming to get you. Mom. Right now, Amanda. I'm on my way. I broke every speed limit getting to that house. When I pulled up, Amanda was standing on the front porch with a small suitcase and Ruby holding her hand. Amanda's eye was swollen, bruised. I wanted to kill him. I loaded them into my car without a word and drove them back to my apartment. I settled Ruby on the couch with cartoons and snacks, then sat Amanda down at the kitchen table. Tell me everything. She did. Through tears and shaking hands, she told me how Brandon's gambling problem had never really stopped. How he had been hiding debt. How he had been lying about where money was going. How tonight, when she had found the credit card statements, he had exploded, pushed her, grabbed her, screamed in her face. Why didn't you tell me things were this bad? Because you were right, Mom. About everything. And I was too proud to admit it. I wanted so badly to make my marriage work, to prove I didn't need saving, that I ignored every red flag. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I held her while she cried. And I made a promise to myself. Brandon wasn't just going to lose the house. He was going to lose everything. Amanda and Ruby stayed with me that night. And the next night. And the night after that. My small 2-bedroom apartment felt cramped but safe. Ruby slept in my bed with me, her tiny body curled against mine, while Amanda took the couch. Every time I looked at the bruise on my daughter's face, dark purple spreading across her cheekbone, something cold and focused settled deeper into my chest. Brandon called 47 times that first day. Yes, 47, I counted. Amanda didn't answer. She had finally listened to me and blocked his number after the 10th call. But he found ways around it. He called from different numbers. From friends' phones. He left voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to threatening. Baby, please. I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I would never hurt you on purpose. Please come home. Then hours later. Amanda, you're being ridiculous. I barely touched you. You're overreacting like you always do. This is your mother's influence, isn't it? She's poisoning you against me. And finally, late that first night. If you don't come home, I'm going to take Ruby. I have rights. She's my daughter too. You can't keep her from me. That last message made Amanda sob so hard she couldn't breathe. I held her, rubbing her back, whispering that everything would be okay even though I wasn't sure it would be. The next morning, I took Amanda to the police station. We filed a report. The officer who took our statement was a young woman named Officer Chin. No, wait, I can't use that name. Officer Melissa Torres. She was kind but direct. Do you want to press charges? She asked Amanda. Amanda hesitated. I could see the fear in her eyes. The doubt. The part of her that still loved the man she had married, the father of her child. I don't know. Officer Torres leaned forward. I understand this is difficult, but I need you to understand something. Domestic violence escalates. It always does. This might have been a push and a grab today. Next time it could be worse. You have a daughter. You need to protect her. And you need to protect yourself. Amanda's hands were shaking. She looked at me. I nodded. Okay, she whispered. I want to press charges. Officer Torres took photos of Amanda's bruises. Documented everything. She told us a detective would follow up within a few days, and that Amanda should file for a restraining order. We went straight to the courthouse from the police station. The process was exhausting. Paperwork, waiting, more paperwork. But by the end of the day, Amanda had a temporary restraining order. Brandon was legally required to stay at least 500 feet away from her and Ruby. That night, I made soup and tried to keep things normal for Ruby's sake. She was only 5 years old. Too young to understand why Daddy wasn't here, why Mommy was crying, why we were all sleeping in Grandma's tiny apartment. Grandma. Ruby asked me while I tucked her in. When can we go home? My heart broke. Soon, very soon, sweetheart. But I didn't know if that was true. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, phone calls, and planning. Amanda met with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman in her 50s named Kathleen Wu who specialized in domestic violence cases. Kathleen laid out the reality in stark terms. You need to file for divorce immediately. We'll ask for full custody of Ruby with supervised visitation for Brandon at most. With the restraining order and the police report, we have a strong case. But you need to be prepared for him to fight back. Men like Brandon don't give up easily. Amanda nodded numbly. Whatever it takes. I just want Ruby to be safe. What about the house? Kathleen asked. Where were you living? My mother's house. She owns it. We were living there rent-free. Kathleen looked at me. Is your name on the deed? Yes. Only mine. They never paid rent. No lease agreement. Kathleen's eyes sharpened. Then you can evict him. With the restraining order in place, you might even be able to get an emergency eviction. He assaulted your daughter on your property. That gives you grounds. I felt a surge of something hot and satisfying rush through me. How fast can we do it? I can file the paperwork tomorrow. But Patricia, you need to be prepared. This will make him very angry. Good, I said. Let him be angry. Kathleen filed the eviction notice the next day. Brandon had 72 hours to vacate the property. Because of the domestic violence restraining order, the timeline was expedited. The sheriff would serve him the papers and oversee his removal from the house if necessary. I didn't tell Amanda I was doing this. Not right away. I knew she would feel guilty, would try to talk me out of it, and would worry about Brandon having nowhere to go. But I was done worrying about Brandon. The papers were served on a Tuesday afternoon. I know because Brandon violated the restraining order that same evening by showing up at my apartment building. He didn't come to my door. He wasn't that stupid. But he stood in the parking lot and screamed. I could hear him from my third-floor window. Patricia, get down here. You can't do this. That's my home. My family. You can't just throw me out. I called the police immediately. Amanda grabbed Ruby and locked themselves in the bedroom. My hands were shaking as I spoke to the dispatcher, but my voice was steady. There's a man violating a restraining order outside my building. He's yelling and making threats. The police arrived within 8 minutes. I watched from my window as they arrested Brandon. He fought them, struggled, screamed obscenities. They handcuffed him and put him in the back of the patrol car. Amanda was crying in the bedroom. Ruby was asking questions we couldn't answer. And I stood at that window feeling something I hadn't felt in months. But tried to control it. Brandon spent the night in jail. He was released the next morning with a court date for violating the restraining order. His lawyer called Kathleen, trying to negotiate. Could Amanda drop the restraining order? Could they work something out? Brandon was willing to go to counseling, to anger management, to do whatever it took. Kathleen's response was ice cold. Tell your client to stay away from my clients, vacate the property by Friday, and hire a good criminal defense attorney. He's going to need it. Friday came. I took the day off work. Kathleen advised me to have the sheriff escort Brandon during the move out to prevent any vandalism or theft. I agreed. I drove to the house, my house, at 10 in the morning. There were already 2 sheriff's deputies there. A moving truck was in the driveway. And Brandon was there, his face twisted with rage and something else I couldn't quite name. Humiliation, maybe. Disbelief. He saw my car and started toward me. The deputies immediately stepped between us. Mr. Morrison. No, I can't use that name. Mr. Fletcher, step back. You're not to have any contact with Miss Patricia. She's stealing my home. Brandon shouted. This is insane. You people are supposed to protect citizens, not help crazy old women destroy families. Mr. Fletcher, if you don't calm down, we'll have to arrest you again. Step back and focus on packing your belongings. I got out of my car slowly. I looked at Brandon across the yard. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. He looked like a man whose world was falling apart. Exactly what he deserves. I didn't say a word to him. I just walked past the deputies and into my house. The inside was a mess. Brandon had clearly been spiraling. Empty beer bottles on the coffee table. Dirty dishes piled in the sink. The place smelled stale and angry. But it was still my house. And soon, it would be mine again completely. I walked through each room, documenting the state of everything with my phone camera. The holes in the walls. The damaged flooring. The broken cabinet door in the kitchen. Evidence for the lawyer, for the security deposit Brandon would never get back, because there had never been a security deposit. I could hear him outside, yelling at the movers, slamming things around. The deputies had to tell him multiple times to calm down. It took him 6 hours to pack up 5 years of life. I stayed the entire time sitting in my car watching, making sure he didn't destroy anything out of spite. At 4 in the afternoon, the moving truck finally pulled away. Brandon stood in the driveway for a long moment, staring at the house. One of the deputies said something to him. He climbed into his car, that leased BMW he could barely afford, and drove away. He didn't look back. The deputies came over to me. Miss Patricia, the property is clear. We did a walkthrough. He took all his personal belongings. Here's the key he surrendered. I took the key. It was warm from Brandon's hand. I closed my fist around it and felt a surge of triumph so intense it almost scared me. Thank you, officers. After they left, I sat in my car for a long time, just looking at the house. My house. The house I had bought with my own money, my own hard work, my own sacrifice. The house I had given to my daughter out of love, and that Brandon had tried to steal from me with his entitlement and cruelty. But I had won. Or at least I thought I had. That night, I went back to my apartment. Amanda was cooking dinner. Ruby was coloring at the table. It looked almost normal. Almost peaceful. "Mom." Amanda looked up when I came in. "How did it go?" "He's out. The house is empty." Amanda's face was complicated. Relief mixed with sadness mixed with guilt. "Where did he go?" "I don't know and I don't care." "Mom." "Amanda, he hurt you. He threatened you. He treated me like garbage in my own home for years. I know he's Ruby's father, and I know this is hard for you. But I need you to understand something. I don't regret what I did. Not for 1 second." Amanda was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. "I know. You're right. It's hard." "I know, baby, but it gets easier. I promise." That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my laptop. I opened my email and started composing a message to my real estate agent, Carol. I was going to sell the house. Get rid of it. Use the money to secure a future for me, Amanda, and Ruby. Start fresh without the weight of that place and all its memories. But before I hit send, I stopped. An idea had started forming in the back of my mind. Something Thomas, my lawyer, had said weeks ago. Men like Brandon, men who feel entitled to things that aren't theirs, can become dangerous when they're threatened. Brandon was threatened now. Cornered. He had lost his home, his wife, his daughter. He was facing criminal charges. His whole life was imploding. Men like that did desperate things. And suddenly, I didn't want to sell the house. I wanted to use it as a bait. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Thomas's number. It was late, but I knew he'd want to hear this. He answered on the third ring. "Patricia? Is everything all right? I need to ask you something. Hypothetically." "Go ahead." "If someone tried to break into my house, the house I just evicted Brandon from, and I had security cameras that caught them, what would happen?" There was a pause. "Well, that would be breaking and entering. Potentially burglary if they stole anything or vandalized the property. With Brandon's existing restraining order and assault charge, it would significantly strengthen the case against him. He could be looking at serious jail time." "How serious?" "A few years, potentially. Especially if he damaged property, or if there was any indication he intended to harm someone." "Why do you ask?" I smiled in the darkness of my kitchen. "Just curious." "Thank you, Thomas." "Patricia." "Good night, Thomas." I hung up. The next morning, I went to a security company. I told them I needed a comprehensive system for my house. Cameras covering every entrance, motion sensors, and the works. I wanted to be alerted on my phone the second anyone approached the property. The technician was a young guy named Marcus who clearly thought I was a paranoid old lady, but he took my money and did the job. By that evening, my house was wired with 8 cameras, motion sensors on every door and window, and a monitoring system that would alert me and the police simultaneously if anyone tried to break in. I didn't tell Amanda what I was doing. She would have called it entrapment or manipulation or cruelty. But it wasn't. I was just protecting my property. If Brandon decided to do something stupid, that was his choice. I just wanted to make sure I had evidence when he did. Because I knew he would. Men like Brandon always did. I started going to the house every few days to check on it, to pick up mail, to make sure everything was secure. I changed all the locks. I had the yard cleaned up. I even started making small repairs, fixing the holes in the walls, replacing the broken cabinet. The house was starting to feel like mine again, like it had been cleansed of Brandon's presence. Amanda was making progress too. She had started seeing Dr. Vasquez, the same therapist I was seeing. She was processing the trauma, the abuse, the years of manipulation she hadn't even realized were happening. She was starting to look lighter, freer. Ruby was adjusting. She asked about her daddy sometimes, but less and less. Kids are resilient that way. Amanda explained that mommy and daddy needed space, that they still loved her, but that things were different now. Brandon tried to call Amanda a few more times from different numbers. She never answered. His voicemails became increasingly desperate. Please, Amanda. I'm living in a motel. I can't afford this. I lost my job because of the arrest. I have nothing. You have to talk to me. We have a daughter together. She needs her father. But he never mentioned me. Never tried to apologize for what he'd said, what he'd done to me. That's how I knew the apologies to Amanda were empty. He didn't actually feel remorse. He just wanted his comfortable life back. 3 weeks after the eviction, Kathleen called me. Patricia, Brandon's lawyer, just filed a motion. He's claiming ownership interest in the house. He's saying that because he lived there for 5 years and made improvements to the property, he's entitled to partial equity. I almost laughed. Is he serious? Dead serious. It's a long shot legally. His name was never on the deed. He never paid rent. And he has no documentation of any financial contribution. But it's a nuisance suit designed to tie things up in court and pressure you to settle. I'm not settling. I didn't think you would. But I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Brandon is desperate, and desperate people do irrational things. She had no idea how right she was. That night, at 2:30 in the morning, my phone exploded with alerts. Motion detected at front door. Motion detected at the side window. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone and opened the security app. The camera feeds loaded. And there he was. Brandon. He was at the back door, trying to get it open with something. A crowbar maybe. He was wearing dark clothes, a hood pulled up. But I could see his face clearly in the infrared camera. The desperation. The anger. He got the door open and stepped inside. He was breaking into my house. I didn't hesitate. I called 911. There's someone breaking into my house. I have it on camera. I'm not there, but I'm watching it happen in real time. The dispatcher was efficient. What's the address? Are you safe? I gave her the address. I'm safe. I'm at a different location. But the person breaking in is my daughter's estranged husband. He has a restraining order. His name is Brandon Fletcher. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me. I watched the camera feeds. Brandon was walking through the house, looking around. He went into the master bedroom. He started tearing things apart, opening closets, looking for something. Then he went downstairs to the kitchen. He opened drawers, pulled things out. He was looking for documents, I realized. The deed to the house, proof of ownership, something he could use in his ridiculous lawsuit. He wouldn't find anything. I had taken all important documents with me weeks ago. But then he did something I didn't expect. He pulled out a container from his backpack. And he started pouring liquid around the kitchen. Gasoline. My blood went cold. He was going to burn down my house. He has gasoline. I told the dispatcher, my voice shaking now. He's going to set the house on fire. Please hurry. Officers are 3 minutes away, ma'am. Stay calm. I watched, helpless, as Brandon poured gasoline across the kitchen floor, into the living room. He was muttering to himself. I couldn't hear it through the cameras, but I could see his lips moving. He looked unhinged, destroyed. He pulled out a lighter. And then I heard sirens. Brandon froze. He looked toward the front door. The sirens were getting louder. He panicked, dropped the lighter, ran for the back door. But the police were already there. I watched as officers surrounded the house, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Brandon tried to run out the back and was immediately tackled by 2 officers. They handcuffed him, read him his rights, and dragged him out of my house while he screamed and fought. It's my house. She stole it from me. But it wasn't. It had never been. The dispatcher was still on the line with me. Ma'am, the suspect is in custody. Officers will need to speak with you and get copies of your security footage. Of course. Whatever they need. I hung up and sat in my bed shaking. Amanda was awake now, standing in the doorway. Mom, what happened? I looked at her. Brandon just tried to burn down the house. Her face went white. What? I showed her the footage. We watched it together. Him breaking in, tearing through rooms, pouring gasoline. Amanda started crying. He could have killed someone. If someone had been there. If Ruby had been there. But no one was there. And now he's going to prison for a very long time. The next few days were a whirlwind. I gave my statement to the police, handed over all the security footage. Brandon was charged with breaking and entering, attempted arson, violating a restraining order, and destruction of property. His bail was set at $100,000. He couldn't pay it. So he sat in jail, waiting for trial. Kathleen called me a week later. Patricia, the prosecutor wants to talk to you. They're building a very strong case against Brandon. With the footage, the prior assault, the restraining order violations, they're looking at offering him a plea deal for significant prison time. But they want to make sure you and Amanda are prepared to testify if it goes to trial. We'll do whatever it takes. Good. Because there's something else. Brandon's lawyer reached out to me. Brandon wants to talk to Amanda. He's asking for one conversation. Supervised, recorded, with lawyers present. He says he wants to apologize and take responsibility. Absolutely not. That's what I said. But Amanda is an adult. She gets to make that choice. I looked at Amanda, who had been sitting next to me listening to the call on speaker. She shook her head. I don't want to see him. I don't want to hear his apologies. He tried to burn down your house, Mom. He could have killed someone. There's nothing left to say. I squeezed her hand. You heard her, Kathleen. The answer is no. Understood. I'll let his lawyer know. After we hung up, Amanda looked at me. Mom, I need to say something. What is it, honey? I'm sorry. For everything. For not believing you about Brandon. For choosing him over you. For letting him treat you the way he did in your own home. I was so wrong. About all of it. I pulled her into a hug. You were trying to save your marriage and keep your family together. There's no shame in that. But I should have left sooner. I should have protected Ruby and myself. You're protecting us now. That's what matters. We sat there for a long time, holding each other. 2 women who had been broken and betrayed, slowly putting themselves back together. But I wasn't done yet. Brandon had tried to destroy my house, my investment, and my future. Now I was going to make sure he paid for it in every possible way. Brandon's trial was set for 8 months later. 8 months of legal preparation, of depositions, of anxiety. But 8 months also gave me time to rebuild, to plan, to ensure that when this was all over, Brandon would have nothing left. The first thing I did was file a civil lawsuit against him for damages to the property. The attempted arson hadn't succeeded, but he had still caused damage. Broken doors, destroyed cabinets, gasoline stains that required professional cleaning. I tallied up every single cost and sued him for $25,000. His lawyer tried to argue he had no assets. I didn't care. The judgment would follow him for years. Garnish his wages if he ever got a decent job again. Ruin his credit. Make sure he never forgot what he'd done. The second thing I did was even more calculated. I reached out to Brandon's employer, his former employer, technically, since he'd been fired after his arrest. I spoke to the HR director and told her the full story. Domestic violence. The restraining order violations. The attempted arson. I'm telling you this, I said carefully, because I want to make sure that if Brandon ever applies for a job at your company again, or if anyone calls for a reference, you have the full picture of who he is. The HR director was quiet for a moment. Miss Patricia, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Between you and me, we had issues with Brandon's expense reports and some questionable client interactions. This confirms our decision to terminate him was the right one. And I can assure you, if anyone calls for a reference, we'll be honest about his time here. Brandon's career in sales was over. I made similar calls to 3 other major companies in the area. Quiet conversations. Just making sure the right people knew the truth about Brandon Fletcher. Not slander. Everything I told them was documented fact. Public record from the police reports and court filings. But effective. Within a few weeks, I heard through Amanda's attorney that Brandon had applied for 7 jobs and been rejected from all of them. He was living in a cheap motel on the edge of town, working part-time at a grocery store, barely making rent. Good for him. Amanda was thriving. She had gotten a new job at an accounting firm. Better pay, better hours, better benefits than her old position. She and Ruby were still living with me, but we were looking at apartments for them. Amanda wanted to be independent again, to rebuild her life on her own terms. I was proud of her. She had gone from a terrified woman with a black eye to someone strong and focused. She was in therapy twice a week. She had joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. She was healing. Ruby was doing well too. We had her in play therapy to help her process everything. She was a resilient little girl, but I knew these early years would shape her. I was determined to make sure she grew up knowing that women don't have to accept being treated poorly, that we fight back, that we win. As Brandon's trial date approached, the prosecutor's office contacted us multiple times. They had an overwhelming case. The security footage alone was damning. But they wanted Brandon's testimony on record. They wanted him to face what he'd done in open court. Amanda agreed to testify. I was ready to testify as well. The trial was scheduled for late September, almost 9 months after Brandon had assaulted Amanda. The courthouse was downtown, a gray building that smelled like floor polish and stress. Amanda and I arrived together. Kathleen met us in the hallway outside the courtroom. The prosecutor is confident, she told us. Brandon's lawyer has been trying to negotiate a plea deal, but Brandon keeps refusing. He seems to think he can convince a jury that he's the victim here. I almost laughed. The victim? Apparently his story is that you manipulated Amanda into leaving him, that you orchestrated the eviction to steal his home. and that he only went to the house to retrieve personal belongings. The gasoline was supposedly for his lawn mower, which he was storing in the garage. That's insane. I have footage of him pouring it all over the kitchen floor. I know. The prosecutor knows. The jury will know. But Brandon is delusional enough to think he can talk his way out of this. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches. A judge's bench at the front. The jury box to the side. And there, at the defense table, was Brandon. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His suit was cheap and didn't fit right. His hair was too long. He had the look of a man who had been beaten down by life, and was too stubborn to accept it. When he saw us, his eyes locked onto mine. There was hate there. Pure, barningate. I stared back at him calmly, and took my seat behind the prosecutor's table. The trial lasted 3 days. Day 1 was jury selection and opening arguments. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. The assault, the restraining order, the eviction, the break-in, the attempted arson. She showed the security footage. Even from where I sat, I could see the jurors' faces change as they watched Brandon pour gasoline through my house. Brandon's lawyer did his best. He painted Brandon as a desperate father who had been unjustly separated from his child. A man who had made mistakes but didn't deserve to have his life destroyed. He claimed the gasoline was a misunderstanding, that Brandon had been emotional and confused, that he never intended to actually light anything on fire. But the footage didn't lie. Day 2 was witness testimony. Amanda went first. She was nervous. I could see her hands shaking as she was sworn in. But once she started talking, her voice steadied. She told the jury everything. The years of emotional manipulation. The way Brandon had treated me in my own home. The affair. The gambling. The mounting debts. And finally, the night he hit her. He pushed me first, Amanda said, her voice clear. I fell against the counter. Then he grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and got in my face. He told me I was worthless. That no one would believe me if I told anyone. That I needed him. What did you do? The prosecutor asked. I called my mother. And she saved me. Brandon's lawyer cross-examined her, trying to poke holes in her story, suggesting she was exaggerating. That the bruises could have been from falling, that she was influenced by her mother's dislike of Brandon. But Amanda didn't break. She answered every question calmly and truthfully. When it was my turn to testify, I was ready. The prosecutor walked me through everything. How I had given them the house rent-free. How Brandon's behavior had changed over the years. The night he told Amanda to let me sleep on the couch. How did that make you feel? The prosecutor asked. Heartbroken, I said honestly. I had given them everything. My home, my money, my time, and my love. And in return, he treated me like I was an intruder. And when you learned he had assaulted your daughter? I knew I had to protect her. And I knew I had to get him out of my house before he hurt her again. The defense attorney tried to make me look vindictive during cross-examination. He suggested I had been looking for an excuse to evict Brandon all along. That I had installed the security cameras hoping to catch him doing something wrong. Isn't it true, Ms. Patricia, that you installed those cameras specifically to entrap Mr. Fletcher? I looked him straight in the eye. I installed cameras to protect my property. If Mr. Fletcher chose to break in and attempt to burn it down, that was his decision, not mine. The jury seemed to agree. Day 3 was expert testimony. A fire investigator explaining how the gasoline was distributed. A domestic violence expert talking about escalation patterns. a psychologist discussing Brandon's behavior. Then Brandon took the stand in his own defense. It was a mistake. He tried to come across as sympathetic, as misunderstood. He talked about how much he loved Amanda and Ruby, how he had made mistakes but was willing to change, how Patricia, he refused to call me by any title of respect, had always hated him and had turned his wife against him. She wanted to control everything, Brandon said, his voice rising. She couldn't stand that Amanda had her own family, her own life. So she poisoned Amanda against me. She waited for one mistake, one bad night, and used it to destroy me. She took my home, my family, everything. Mr. Fletcher, the prosecutor said during cross-examination, whose name is on the deed to that house? Brandon's jaw clenched. Hers. And how much rent did you pay to live there? None. And in the 5 years you lived there, how much did you contribute to property taxes, insurance, or major repairs? We paid utilities. That's not what I asked. How much did you contribute to the actual ownership costs of the home? Nothing. So you lived rent-free in someone else's home for 5 years, assaulted their daughter, violated a restraining order, broke into the property, and attempted to commit arson. And you believe you're the victim in this situation. Brandon's face went red. You don't understand. Answer the question, Mr. Fletcher. Do you believe you're the victim? Yes. She took everything from me. She took what was hers. Isn't that correct? Brandon didn't answer. The prosecutor showed the security footage again. Made Brandon watch it. I made him watch himself break into my house, pour gasoline through the rooms, and pull out a lighter. Mr. Fletcher, what were you planning to do with that lighter? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. Were you planning to set the house on fire? No. Maybe, I don't know. I was angry. I was desperate. I had lost everything. So you decided to burn down Miss Patricia's house. It wasn't her house. I lived there for 5 years. I raised my daughter there. It was my home. And there it was. The entitlement. The delusion. The core belief that had driven everything. Brandon genuinely believed the house was his. That living there rent-free for 5 years had somehow given him ownership. That his presence, his existence in that space, trumped my legal ownership, my financial investment, my rights. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Breaking and entering. Attempted arson. Violation of restraining order. Destruction of property. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks later. Amanda and I left the courtroom together. She was crying, not sad tears but relief. Release. The kind of crying that comes when something you've been carrying for too long is finally set down. It's over, she whispered. It's really over. Not quite, I said. But almost. Sentencing day came on a cold October morning. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case, and apparently it had struck a nerve in the community. Other women who had dealt with entitled, abusive men. People who were tired of seeing bad behavior go unpunished. Brandon was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He had been in jail since the verdict, unable to make bail. He looked hollow. Broken. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Harriet Stone. She had a reputation for being fair but tough, especially in domestic violence cases. She read through the case file, then looked at Brandon over her glasses. Mr. Fletcher, I've been on the bench for 23 years. In that time, I've seen a lot of men like you. Men who believe that their wants, their needs, their feelings are more important than the law. More important than other people's rights. More important than basic human decency. Brandon stared at the floor. You assaulted your wife. You violated a restraining order multiple times. You broke into someone else's property. And you attempted to commit arson, which could have resulted in the deaths of firefighters, neighbors, or anyone nearby when that fire spread. All because you felt entitled to something that was never yours. She paused, letting the words sink in. The prosecution has recommended a sentence of 8 years. Your attorney has asked for leniency, citing your lack of prior criminal record and your alleged remorse. But Mr. Fletcher, I don't see remorse. I see a man who still believes he's the victim, who still thinks the world has wronged him. And that makes you dangerous. Brandon's lawyer started to say something, but Judge Stone held up her hand. I'm sentencing you to 10 years in state prison. You will serve a minimum of 7 years before being eligible for parole. Additionally, you will pay restitution to Ms. Patricia in the amount of $25,000 for property damage, and you will have a permanent restraining order preventing you from contacting Amanda or Ruby Fletcher for the rest of your life. Once released, you will be on supervised probation for 5 years. If you violate any terms of your parole, you will serve the remainder of your sentence. 10 years. The courtroom was silent. Brandon's face went white. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Brandon shook it off. This is insane, Brandon said, his voice breaking. This is insane. She ruined my life. Mr. Fletcher, you ruined your own life. Bailiff, remove him. As they led Brandon away, he looked back at me one last time. Our eyes met across the courtroom. And in that moment, I saw it. The final realization that he had lost. Completely. Irrevocably. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. I just stared back at him, calm and steady, until he was led through the door and disappeared. Amanda grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight. She was crying again, but this time it was pure relief. It's over, she whispered. It's really truly over, Mom. Yes, baby, it over. The weeks following the sentencing felt strange. Lighter somehow, like a weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying had been lifted. Amanda and Ruby moved into their own apartment, a small but bright 2-bedroom place across town. Amanda had saved enough money from her new job to afford it, and I helped with the security deposit. Watching her unpack boxes in her own space, her own home that no one could take from her, I felt a surge of pride so intense it brought tears to my eyes. Mom. Amanda noticed. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Look at how far you've come. She set down the box she was holding and hugged me. I couldn't have done it without you. You saved me, Mom. You saved both of us. No, I said firmly. You saved yourself. I gave you a safe place to land. But you did the hard work. You left. You testified. You rebuilt. That was all you. Ruby came running in from her new bedroom, excited about the closet that was as big as a cave. We both laughed and the moment passed, but I knew Amanda understood what I meant. She was strong. Stronger than she'd ever realized. As for me, I had decisions to make about the house. It sat empty for a while after Brandon's arrest. I had it professionally cleaned. The gasoline smell took weeks to fully dissipate. I repaired all the damage he'd caused. Slowly, room by room, I erased every trace of him from the space. I thought about selling it. Starting completely fresh. But every time I walked through those rooms, I remembered why I'd bought it in the first place. It was supposed to be my retirement dream. My future. My security. And I decided I wasn't going to let Brandon's actions steal that from me. So instead of selling, I moved in. I gave up my small apartment and moved into the house that had caused so much pain and conflict. And something strange happened. As I arranged my own furniture, hung my own pictures, painted the walls colors I had always loved, the house transformed. It wasn't Brandon's anymore. It wasn't even really Amanda's anymore. It was mine. I set up the master bedroom as my sanctuary, soft blues and greens, a comfortable reading chair by the window, shelves full of books I'd been meaning to read for years. The second bedroom became my office. The third, a guest room for when Ruby came to visit. And the fourth I turned into a craft room, something I'd always wanted but never had space for. The house became a reflection of me. My taste. My peace and my life. I retired from nursing that winter. I was 62 years old, eligible for early retirement, and I had enough saved to live comfortably. The settlement money from the civil suit against Brandon would take years to actually collect, but I didn't need it. I had everything I needed. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't taking care of anyone but myself. It felt strange at first. Selfish even. But Dr. Vasquez helped me work through that. Patricia, she said during one of our sessions, you've spent 62 years being a caretaker, a nurse, a mother, a grandmother. You've poured yourself into other people. There is nothing selfish about finally pouring into yourself. She was right. I started taking art classes, joined a book club, volunteered at a women's shelter, helping other women who were trying to escape situations like Amanda had been in. I told them my story, not for sympathy, but to show them that it was possible, that you could stand up to abusive men, that you could win. The women at the shelter started calling me Mama Patricia. They would ask my advice, cry on my shoulder, and celebrate their victories with me. I became a mentor to women who needed to see that there was life after abuse, that they could be strong, that they could reclaim what was theirs. It gave me purpose in a way I hadn't expected. Amanda and I grew closer than we'd ever been. Without Brandon between us, poisoning the well, we could just be mother and daughter again. We had lunch every week. She brought Ruby over for sleepovers at least twice a month. We talked about everything. Her therapy, her healing, her fears about dating again someday. I don't know if I can trust my own judgment anymore, she confessed one afternoon over coffee.
Chose Brandon.
I missed all the red flags. What if I do it again? You won't, I told her. Because now you know what the red flags look like. You know what you deserve. And you know you have the strength to walk away if someone doesn't treat you right. How did you know? She asked. With Dad, I mean. How did you know he was a good man? I smiled, remembering my late husband. Your father made me feel safe. Not controlled, safe. There's a difference. He respected my opinions, encouraged my career, shared the housework without being asked. He never made me feel small or stupid, or like I needed his permission to exist. I looked at Amanda seriously. That's what you deserve. Not perfection, but respect. Partnership. Safety. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm going to find that someday. I believe it now. I believe it too. Ruby was thriving. The play therapy had helped tremendously. She rarely asked about her father anymore. She had been so young that the memories were already fading. What she would remember was being loved by her mother and grandmother. Being safe. Being valued. That was enough. About 6 months after Brandon's sentencing, I got a letter from him. It was sent through his attorney. He wasn't allowed to contact me directly. The letter was long, rambling, and full of excuses. He talked about how prison had given him time to think, how he realized he'd made mistakes, how he wanted to apologize. But even in his apology, there was entitlement. He said things like, "I'm sorry you felt disrespected," instead of, "I'm sorry I disrespected you." He talked about how hard prison was for him, how unfair the sentence was, how he hoped I could find it in my heart to write a letter to the parole board when the time came. I read the letter once. Then I tore it into small pieces and threw it away. He was still playing the victim, still refusing to take real responsibility, still thinking he could manipulate his way out of consequences. Some people never change. I didn't respond. I didn't owe him my forgiveness. I didn't owe him anything. Amanda got a similar letter. She didn't respond either. We were done with Brandon Fletcher. 2 years after Brandon's sentencing, I was in my garden planting roses when my phone rang. It was Kathleen. "Patricia, I wanted to give you a heads up. Brandon's up for his first parole hearing next month." My stomach dropped. Already? I thought he had to serve 7 years minimum. He does for parole eligibility, but they still hold hearings. It's almost always denied the first time, especially for violent offenders. But you and Amanda have the right to submit victim impact statements, and you can attend the hearing if you want. I'll be there. Amanda decided not to go. She was in a good place in her life and didn't want to risk the trauma of seeing him again. But she wrote a powerful statement about how his abuse had affected her, how she still dealt with anxiety and trust issues, how she believed he was still a danger. I wrote my own statement. I talked about the years of disrespect, the entitlement, the way he had tried to steal something I had worked my entire life to build. The attempted arson. The fact that even now, 2 years later, he still refused to take real responsibility. The parole hearing was held at the state prison, a grim concrete building surrounded by fences and guard towers. I went with Kathleen. We sat in a small hearing room with fluorescent lights and plastic chairs. Brandon was brought in wearing prison blues. He'd aged. Gray in his hair now. Lines on his face. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. The parole board consisted of 3 people, 2 men and a woman. They reviewed his file, asked him questions about his behavior in prison, his remorse, his plans if released. Brandon had clearly prepared. He said all the right things. He'd taken anger management classes, completed a substance abuse program, found religion. He talked about how much he'd changed, how he understood now that he'd been wrong, how he just wanted a chance to rebuild his life. But then they read Amanda's statement, and mine. I watched Brandon's face as they read my words aloud. Watched him hear everything he'd done. Everything he'd tried to take from me. His jaw clenched. His hands fisted. And for just a second I saw it. The anger. The rage. The same entitlement that had driven him to pour gasoline through my house. He hadn't changed at all. He'd just gotten better at hiding it. The parole board saw it too. After a brief deliberation, the chairwoman spoke. "Mr. Fletcher, while we acknowledge your participation in prison programs, we have serious concerns about your lack of genuine remorse and the severity of your crimes. Your victims have made clear that they still fear you, and we believe you continue to pose a risk to their safety. Parole is denied. You will be eligible for another hearing in 2 years." Brandon's face went white. "But I've done everything you asked. Our decision is final. This hearing is concluded." As they led him away, Brandon looked at me one more time. That same look from the courtroom. Hatred. Blame. Like everything was still somehow my fault. I looked back at him calmly. And I realized something. He would probably serve his full 10 years. And maybe even then he still wouldn't understand. Still wouldn't accept responsibility. Still wouldn't change. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had won. Not just in court, but in life. I had my home. My peace. My daughter and granddaughter were safe and thriving. I had a life full of purpose and meaning. And Brandon had nothing but time to think about how he'd destroyed everything himself. It's been 5 years now since that night Brandon told Amanda to let me sleep on the couch. 5 years since he tried to take everything from me. I'm 67 years old. Ruby is 10. Amanda is 37 and recently started dating a kind, gentle man who treats her like she's precious. Who makes her laugh. Who Ruby actually likes. I still live in my house. The house I bought, the house I fought for, the house that's finally, completely mine. Every room holds good memories now. Ruby's art projects on the refrigerator. Sunday dinners with Amanda and her new boyfriend. Book club meetings in my living room. The garden I've cultivated in the backyard. Brandon is still in prison. He was denied parole again at his second hearing. He'll be eligible one more time in 2 years, when he hits 7 years served. I don't know if he'll get out then, or serve the full 10. Either way, the restraining order is permanent. He can never contact us again. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't fought back. If I had just accepted his disrespect. If I had let him stay in my house. Let him treat me like nothing. Let him abuse my daughter without consequences. He would still be there. Still draining resources. Still mistreating Amanda. Still teaching Ruby that it's normal for men to be cruel and women to accept it. But I didn't accept it. I fought back and I won. People ask me sometimes if I regret how it all turned out. If I wish I'd handled things differently. If I feel guilty about Brandon being in prison. The answer is no. I didn't put Brandon in prison. He put himself there with his choices. His entitlement. His violence. His refusal to respect other people's boundaries or rights. All I did was refuse to be a victim. I protected what was mine. I protected my daughter. I protected my granddaughter. And I would do it all again without hesitation. The women at the shelter where I volunteer ask me for advice all the time. They're in situations like Amanda was, trapped, scared, unsure if they have the strength to leave. I tell them the same thing every time. You are stronger than you think. You deserve respect. You deserve safety. You deserve a home that feels like yours. And if someone tries to take that from you, you fight back. You don't fight dirty. You fight smart. You use the law. You document everything. You build a case. And you don't stop until you've won. Some of them cry when I say this. Some of them hug me. Some of them tell me I'm their hero. But I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who refused to be pushed out of her own life. The best revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about reclaiming what's yours. It's about standing up and saying no more. It's about drawing a line and defending it. Brandon tried to make me feel small, worthless, like I didn't matter. But I do matter. My home matters. My boundaries matter. My daughter and granddaughter matter. And now we're all safe, thriving, and free. That's not revenge. That's justice. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in standing up for yourself and protecting what's yours, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of people who refuse to be victims. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take advantage of you? Share your story in the comments. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you deserve respect. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.